They called it a gala, but to me it felt like a funeral. The chandelier light hit every crystal wine glass like a warning bell, and I already felt out of place before Silas even picked up the mic. My name is Eleanor. I'm 33 years old. I live in Aiken, South Carolina, horse country, where lineage matters more than loyalty, and ranches pass hands like old money. For the last 9 years, I ran the Caro Equestrian Estate like my life depended on it. Because it did. I stood near the back of the banquet hall, in a fitted navy dress that I'd picked out only because it didn't wrinkle. Beside me, one of the stable hands leaned in and said, "Big announcement tonight. Bet it's about you." I nodded slightly, my heart pounding in rhythm with the clink of cutlery. Silas Caro stepped onto the small stage. My adoptive father. My mentor. My reason for working 12-hour days and skipping holidays. He adjusted his cufflinks, those antique ones shaped like foxes, and smiled his politician smile. "I want to thank everyone here," he began, his voice smooth, practiced. "We've seen a revival these past years. Our breeding program is stronger than ever. And that's why, tonight, I'm proud to name our next director of operations. Someone who carries the Caro name, someone born for leadership." I felt my body straighten on instinct. Every cell in me braced for his gaze. "Please welcome my niece, Portia Caro." I didn't hear the applause. All I could hear was blood rushing in my ears. Portia emerged from the front row in a silver dress that shimmered like it cost more than my salary. Her dark hair was pinned in one of those effortless updos that take 2 stylists and a bottle of hairspray. She took the stage like it had been hers all along. When the applause died down, Silas continued, "Eleanor, of course, remains our most trusted hand. Her dedication speaks for itself. A fine technician. And we're grateful for her service. A technician. A hand. Not family." Portia's eyes found mine across the room. She raised her champagne flute in my direction, not a toast, but a smirk disguised as civility. Then Silas walked over to me, like it was nothing, like this was some neighborly gesture. He pressed a folded $100 bill into my hand. "For the long hours," he said quietly. "You've been a real asset. $100. For 9 years. I looked down at it. Crisp, smudged paper. It felt like being tipped at a gas station for checking someone's tire pressure. I didn't say anything. I just folded the bill once more, smaller this time, until it felt like lint in my palm. There was no point in making a scene. Not here, not in front of these people who'd always seen me as the help, never the heir. I turned slowly, walked out through the side door, and didn't look back. Outside, the air smelled like roses and manure, the real Caro blend. My heels clicked across the cobblestone as I made my way to the parking lot. No one followed. That was the moment I realized the truth. I had rebuilt this place from the ground up. I had bred champions, fixed budgets, fired crooks, and earned respect in every stall and stable. But to Silas, I was never a daughter. Just a stand-in. Just a placeholder until someone with the right name showed up. They didn't choose Portia because she was better. They chose her because she was blood. And in this world, that was all that mattered. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just drove away in silence, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Because if they thought they'd seen what I could build for them, they had no idea what I was about to build for myself. The next morning, I drove to the estate with a knot in my stomach and mud on my tires. I had barely slept. I told myself I just needed to collect a few things, talk to the staff, remind everyone that I was still, what, exactly? I didn't have the words for it yet. When I pulled into the gravel lot, something felt off. The main stable gates, normally open by dawn, were shut. My keycard didn't work. I swiped it twice, then a third time. Still red. Inside the front office, Laramie, the estate secretary, looked up, startled. "Oh, Eleanor. I thought you were coming in later." I forced a smile. "I'm here now." She fiddled with a stack of mail, avoiding eye contact. "You might want to talk to Portia first." "Right. Of course." The old office, my office, had been redone overnight. The glass door now read Portia Caro, Executive Director. My nameplate was gone. The desk was cleared. Even the picture of me and Bellamy, our retired champion stud, had been replaced with a black and white shot of Portia leaning against a horse she probably couldn't name. She was inside, legs crossed, sipping something from a lavender ceramic mug. When she saw me, she beamed like we were old friends at brunch. "Eleanor, darling, come in." I didn't move. She stood and walked over with practiced elegance, all glinting bracelets and vanilla perfume. "First, thank you for all your hard work. Seriously. The board was impressed by everything you've accomplished." I stayed quiet. I wanted to see where this was going. Obviously, with the new title comes some structural changes. "You'll still have a place here," of course. We value your expertise. There it was. That word again. Portia continued, we've created a new role for you, more suited to your skill set. You'll be overseeing feed inventory and basic stable logistics. Less meetings, more hands-on. I think it'll be a good fit. Feed inventory. I looked at her. Is this a demotion? She laughed. No, just a realignment. You've always been brilliant in the barns. Why not let you shine there? The anger in me started to stir, slow and hot, but I kept my expression neutral. I had learned long ago that dignity wasn't just about posture, it was about silence. Well, I said quietly, if that's what's needed. Portia's smile faltered, just for a second. She hadn't expected compliance. She had expected a scene, a tantrum, maybe even tears. But I gave her nothing. Instead, I turned to go. I'll have the first inventory report by Friday. As I walked away, I passed the corner office window and caught a glimpse of myself in the reflection, my posture straight, my face unreadable. Let them think they won. Because while Portia was celebrating her paper title, I was already calculating the numbers in my head. How many of the breeding contracts were technically tied to me, how much data I had on our lineage software, and which suppliers owed me favors. They thought they had shoved me out to pasture. But what they didn't know was that I was already building a new fence, one with my name on it. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in a roadside diner 50 miles from the Caro estate, nursing a bad cup of coffee and waiting for my real team to show up. First came Dr. Renee Marsh, our former equine vet. She used to run the medical side of the operation before Portia decided a more modern approach was needed, which apparently meant outsourcing to flashy consultants with zero barn time. Then came Jonah Glass, the nutritionist who built our grain-to-performance program from scratch. He left after his job was restructured, which was a polite way of saying Portia didn't understand what he did and thought he cost too much. Last was Ivy Tran, our marketing genius. Ivy had crafted the Caro brand into a national presence, transforming a near-bankrupt ranch into an elite name. The moment Portia took over, Ivy's campaigns were labeled too grassroots. She quit within the week. We hugged. We didn't do small talk. We didn't need to. I still can't believe she put you in charge of feed inventory, Jonah said, shaking his head. She needed me out of the way, I replied simply. Renee leaned forward. And now you're calling us why? I pulled a folder from my satchel and laid it on the table. Inside were laminated copies of bloodline trees, genetic performance indexes, a digital key to the software I had designed for breeding optimization, all the secrets behind the Caro horses that had been winning competitions for the last 5 years. Jonah flipped through the charts. Wait, these are the original models. Pre-Portia, I nodded. These are ours. They were never part of the Caro official system. I built the predictive algorithm on my own license. The DNA archives? Still registered to my private database. Ivy's eyes lit up. You're serious. As a fractured femur, I said. I have access to everything that made that ranch valuable. The only thing they ever owned was the land. Renee gave a low whistle. You thinking what I think you're thinking? I bought 28 acres in the Blue Ridge foothills last year, I said, sliding over a printed deed. It used to be my mother's, a foreclosure I reversed just before the bank auction. No one knows I own it. Jonah leaned back, blinking in disbelief. You've been planning this. I met his gaze. Not always. But the second Portia called me a skilled hand, I knew I'd been building the wrong empire. Ivy opened her laptop. We'll need a name. I smiled. Already got one. Juniper Crest Stables. Renee looked impressed. Sounds expensive. It will be, I said. But also ethical. Sustainable. Selective. We won't breed horses for ego, we'll breed for excellence. Jonah grinned. With the actual science behind it. Not Portia's champagne wish list. I nodded. And we'll do it quietly. The Caros won't notice until it's too late. I want whispers, not headlines. Not yet. Ivy was already typing. Website domains available. I'll buy it tonight. Social handles too. Renee raised her mug. To Juniper Crest. I raised mine. To everything they didn't see coming. We clinked coffee cups over laminated menus and a chipped Formica table. It wasn't glamorous. But it was honest. It was ours. And just like that, the war they didn't know they started had already begun, not with explosions, but with ideas whispered over coffee and revenge measured in data and bloodlines. It started with a whisper, just a quiet rumor about a new facility in the Blue Ridge foothills. Not even a name at first. Just murmurs among a few trainers at a competition in Lexington. You hear about that place out in North Carolina? Invite only. Custom built. Supposed to be doing something wild with bloodlines and rehab techniques. I never advertised Juniper Crest. I let the right people find it. The property was nothing like the Caro estate, no iron gates, no family crest stamped into every stone. The land sloped gently with thick pines, soft pastures, and open-air barns that blended into the hills like they'd always belonged. Everything was state-of-the-art but disguised in simplicity. We didn't wear name tags. We didn't take walk-ins. Every new client came from a referral, every sale required an NDA, and every horse bred under our program had a genetic tag matched to a predictive performance profile. The kind of precision that scared people, because it worked. Within a month, we had a waiting list. By the second, we had defectors. The first to jump ship from Caro was a dressage trainer named Alicia Mendez. She'd worked with me during the estate's rebuilding years and left when Portia forced her to use imported stock from Austria that didn't match our climate or performance strategy. When she showed up at Juniper Crest, all she said was, "I want my riders to win again." I didn't have to ask what she meant. Portia, meanwhile, had taken the opposite route. She started buying. She dumped money into glossy ad campaigns, posed for photos beside horses she couldn't pronounce, and started importing sires with high price tags and zero compatibility. She thought prestige came with a receipt, but horses don't care about couture. Within 3 months, 5 of our former clients had broken their breeding contracts with Caro, paying their own penalties just to walk away. One of them, a show jumper from Georgia, pulled me aside after touring Juniper Crest and said, "This is what I always thought I was paying for." We didn't offer fancy events or champagne barns. We offered performance, data, results, and care, the kind that understood a horse wasn't a machine. Our program tracked behavior, nutrition, recovery. Renee developed a post-injury protocol that cut average recovery time in half. Jonah rebuilt his feed program from scratch using locally sourced, non-GMO blends tailored to each horse's microbiome. Ivy, of course, worked magic behind the scenes. Every online mention of Juniper Crest felt like an accident, a photo of a horse midair with no tag, a rider in our signature deep green jacket on a winner's podium, a silent sponsorship listed only as JC. The Caros couldn't match it, because they didn't understand it. I knew the signs of desperation were coming. Portia began offering discounts to new clients, something the Caros had never done. Then she hired a celebrity trainer from California and flew in a stallion that turned out to be infertile. I heard through the grapevine that 2 board members had quietly stepped down. Silas still hadn't reached out. Not that I expected him to. By the end of the quarter, Juniper Crest had sold 3 yearlings, all precision bred, each one matched to its rider through performance modeling. One had already qualified for regionals. When I looked at the Caro Estate's public sales list that month, they had 9 horses still unsold. The photos were staged, the language desperate, and I didn't say a word. No public comment, no press release, no dramatic post, just silence. Because silence, it turns out, is louder when it follows a legacy collapsing under its own ego. Let them keep talking. We were busy building the future, one bloodline, one rider, one win at a time. The ballroom at the National Equine Summit was packed. Chandeliers glowed above rows of industry elites, trainers, breeders, sponsors, and judges, all dressed like money. The air buzzed with the usual cocktail of ambition and competition. I stood near the back of the room, not bothering to find my assigned table yet. I wasn't here for the wine or the schmoozing. I was here because Juniper Crest had been nominated for the Innovation in Breeding Award, and everyone knew what that meant. We weren't the underdog anymore. Ivy had warned me about this night. "They're gonna watch you like you walked in with a torch in one hand and their family tree in the other," she'd said, straightening the collar of my tailored jacket. Which, to be fair, isn't far off. She wasn't wrong. When the announcer took the stage and started listing the finalists, I scanned the crowd. I didn't have to look long. Silas was in the 3rd row, straight-backed in a dark suit, eyes trained on the stage like he was trying not to blink. And beside him, in a crimson gown with a forced smile and barely concealed panic, sat Portia. They didn't see me yet. The announcer's voice carried across the room. And this year's recipient of the Innovation in Breeding Award, for advancements in genetic performance mapping, sustainable line development, and holistic training integration, Juniper Crest Stables. Applause erupted. Real applause. Not polite. Not reserved. I walked to the stage as cameras flashed. Somewhere behind me, I imagined Portia's champagne flute cracking in her grip. The award was sleek and silver. Modern. Like us. I took the mic, scanning the crowd briefly before I spoke. "When we started Juniper Crest, it wasn't about rebellion," I said calmly. "It was about the horses. The ones that weren't seen as investments, but as athletes, partners, lives worth understanding." A pause. Not a sound from the audience. I want to thank the team that rebuilt this from nothing. Renee, Jonah, Ivy, your work is the backbone of everything we do. This isn't about legacy. It's about integrity. About doing better because we know better. Another pause. I let it stretch. And for anyone who ever felt underestimated, keep building. Quietly, if you have to. Your results will speak louder than your critics ever did. When I stepped down, the applause was louder than before. As I returned to my table, I caught Silas's eye for just a moment. He didn't blink, didn't smile, just looked like a man realizing he'd handed the keys to the wrong heir. Portia didn't look up at all. Later, after the photos and handshakes, I stood outside in the cold with the award under my arm and the future at my back. I wasn't the girl in the navy dress anymore. I wasn't waiting for approval. I wasn't anyone's skilled hand. I was the one they tried to replace. And now I was the one they had to watch win. The call came on a Thursday morning, blocked number, no voicemail. I let it go. Then it came again. And again. By the third ring, I picked up, more curious than concerned. Eleanor, a familiar voice said stiffly. It's Silas. I didn't say anything. I just waited. He cleared his throat. We need to talk. In person. I could have said no. I could have hung up and gone back to reviewing the new breeding projections. But something told me this wasn't a courtesy call. It was a surrender. That afternoon, they showed up at Juniper Crest unannounced. Silas, still in his pressed blazer, though it hung looser on him now, and Portia, trailing behind in oversized sunglasses, even though it was cloudy. They looked tired, smaller. My office overlooked the main paddock. They stood outside like strangers at a locked door until Ivy let them in and silently walked out the other way. Impressive place, Silas said, forcing a smile as he glanced around. Didn't expect it to be so polished. I motioned to the chairs across from my desk. You didn't come here to flatter me. Silas sat. Portia didn't. He sighed, rubbing his temple like the weight of this conversation had followed him for months. The estate's in trouble. Financially. Reputationally. I said nothing. He glanced at Portia, who finally spoke, voice brittle. Most of the board has stepped down. We lost 3 of our biggest clients to, here. I raised an eyebrow. To Juniper Crest, you mean? She flinched. Yes. Silas leaned forward. We need your help. The estate can't survive without someone who understands the systems you built. The bloodlines. The software. The clients. You mean the systems you dismissed, I said. The bloodlines you called replaceable. The clients you handed champagne and excuses. He looked down. We're willing to offer you a co-director position, Portia said, her voice growing harder. Equal authority. You and me. I laughed once. Soft, but sharp. No, thank you. Silas stiffened. You're seriously turning this down? I tilted my head. Let me remind you of something I was told a year ago at the awards dinner. You're a skilled hand, not a leader. Portia's jaw clenched. That was taken out of context. No, it wasn't, I said calmly. It was crystal clear. She stepped forward, her tone icy. So this is revenge? This is peace, I replied. For me. You don't get to set fire to someone's house and then ask to borrow a match. Silas stood, slower than before. We were wrong. I see that now. I'm not the one you need to say that to, I said, gesturing to the stall window. Outside, one of our newest foals, a Caro-descended lineage, quietly reclaimed and reborn under our care, trotted beside its dam. You handed me nothing, I added. I built everything. You just gave me a reason. They left without another word. And this time I didn't watch them go. Because they weren't leaving my world. They were already out of it. The paperwork came in a thick envelope, the kind that made lawyers sweat. Silas probably never expected the Caro estate to hit the liquidation stage. But once the lenders started circling, there wasn't much he could do. The property had been leveraged for cash during the last desperate months. Portia's flashy PR campaigns were bleeding money, and the high-end stock horses she imported turned out to be both incompatible and unsellable. They listed everything, the stables, the pastureland, the equipment, the breeding licenses, even the family trademarks, under one umbrella, the Caro Equestrian Holdings portfolio, for sale, to anyone with the means and motive. So I made the call. Not under my name, of course. I used an LLC, registered in Asheville, with Ivy as the public-facing director. The initial offer wasn't even the highest bid, but ours came with a condition that no one else offered. We'd pay in full, cash. No escrow, no contingencies. That's what closed it. On closing day, I arrived not in boots and denim but in a charcoal blazer and black trousers. My heels clicked against the cold marble of the downtown law office where the final meeting took place. Silas was already there. So was Portia. She looked thinner, the polished gloss replaced with something brittle and bruised. Silas stood stiff by the window, staring out at a skyline that didn't belong to him. The lawyers walked us through the documents. The sale price. The release of debt. The full transfer of all Caro trademarks, patents, digital assets, and DNA lineage registries. When they asked if the buyer had any final statements, I stood. Yes, I said. Just one. I turned toward Silas and Portia and met their eyes, calm and unshaken. I'm not reviving the Caro name. Silas blinked. What? I'm dissolving it. Permanently. Portia's eyes widened. You can't do that. I can, I said evenly. And I already have. As of today, all Caro estate branding, legacy trademarks, and associated lineages will be retired. The horses still under contract will be reclassified under new identifiers. The crest? The name? The history? All gone. Silas sat down like the air had been sucked from his lungs. You'd really erase 100 years of legacy? He asked quietly. I didn't flinch. You erased mine first. Portia's voice cracked. This is about spite. No, I said. This is about precision. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was the original blueprint I had drawn years ago for a better breeding model, one Silas had rejected, saying it was too complex for traditional clients. I placed it on the table between us. That's what built your comeback, I said. Not your name. Not your crest. Me. Portia's face fell. Silas reached for the folder, his hand trembling. You really mean to end it? I already did, I said softly. I signed the last page, watched the notary stamp it, and handed the pen back to the closing attorney. Then I stood, collected my coat, and turned toward the door. No drama. No parting shots. Only silence. Outside, the wind was cold and clean. The street felt unfamiliar, like a memory that no longer stung. Back at Juniper Crest, the staff had already cleared space in the genetics archive for the newly acquired data. Renee was prepping 2 retired Caro broodmares for reclassification. Jonah had a new nutrition plan ready for the younger foals coming in. Ivy had already drafted the press release. Juniper Crest acquires former Caro estate. All legacy programs retired. No quotes. No gloating. Just a single sentence that said everything. And that night, as I walked the foaling barn with a fresh coat draped over my shoulders and the crisp scent of hay in the air, I felt no anger, no sadness, only clarity. I hadn't just bought the estate. I had buried the dynasty, and planted something better in its place. 6 months later, the invitation came in a thick cream envelope with gold trim. The return address said the Beaumont Foundation, but I knew exactly where the event was being held, the old Caro mansion. Or what used to be. The new owners had turned it into a boutique venue called the Foxhall, rebranded, repainted, repurposed. It was hosting a gala for elite breeders, part of a charity auction and networking showcase. Exclusive guest list, black tie, and I was invited. I almost threw it away, but I didn't. That night, I pulled my hair into a low bun, slipped into a backless deep green gown Ivy had picked out, and let her do my makeup for the first time in years. Don't say a word when you see them, she warned, lining my lips with practiced calm. Smile, then leave them in the dust. I'm not here for them, I said. She grinned. That's exactly why it's going to hit harder. The new venue looked nothing like the one I remembered. The portraits were gone, the rugs replaced, the lighting warmer, more modern. Only the bones of the place were the same, the arch of the staircase, the vaulted ceiling above the foyer, the faint scent of polished wood under everything else. People noticed me the second I walked in. Eyes followed. Conversations paused. I wasn't just Eleanor anymore. I was Eleanor from Juniper Crest. I mingled, politely, signed a few programs, gave a brief interview I hadn't planned on. When I stepped into the main hall for the presentation, I spotted them at the edge of the crowd, Silas and Portia. They stood off to the side near the bar, not talking to anyone. Portia was in navy, her hair pulled too tight. Silas looked older, his posture stiffer. They blended into the shadows like museum pieces no one had come to see. For a moment, I just watched them. Not with bitterness. Not even pity. Just distance. When they finally saw me, Portia's eyes went wide, like she hadn't expected I'd show. Silas gave a faint nod, not an acknowledgement, not an apology. Just recognition. I walked over. They both straightened. Evening, I said simply. Neither of them spoke. I just wanted to say thank you, I continued. Not for the past, but for making it so easy to leave it behind. Portia opened her mouth, then closed it again. Silas's eyes narrowed. You really don't hate us? No, I said quietly. That would mean I still cared. I let the silence sit for a second, then smiled, not to be cruel, but to be free. Take care of yourselves, I said. And if not, take care of each other. Then I turned and walked away. I didn't look back, because there was nothing there I needed to reclaim. I had already built everything that mattered, and this time it had my name on it, not theirs. Outside, the night air was warm. My driver opened the door. As I stepped inside, I caught a glimpse of the building in the mirror. Old walls, new name, and nothing left unfinished.